Commander Zethkar stood 8 feet tall on his powerful legs as he watched the screens in his command room. His thick scales caught the blue light from the displays, while his yellow eyes studied the strange new species they had discovered. The Vorthon Empire had found another world to add to their collection, and this one looked easier than most. The humans were small and weak-looking. Zethkar had seen many different alien races during his long career as a warrior, but these creatures seemed almost helpless. They had no natural armor like his people did. Their skin was soft and pink or brown with no protection at all. They were barely 6 feet tall at most and looked like they would break if someone pushed them too hard. Zethkar clicked his claws against the metal table as he studied more images. The humans carried primitive weapons that shot small pieces of metal. They wore basic armor that looked like it was made from cheap materials. Their ships were slow and clunky compared to Vorthon vessels. Everything about them screamed weakness to his experienced eye. Admiral Krixtal entered the room with heavy footsteps that echoed off the walls. The old warrior was even larger than Zethkar, with darker scales and more battle scars. He had conquered dozens of worlds for the Empire, and his reputation struck fear into enemies across the galaxy. "Show me what we are dealing with, Commander," the Admiral said in his deep voice. His sharp teeth showed when he spoke. Zethkar activated the main screen and pointed to the footage they had captured. "These are human soldiers, Admiral. They call themselves Marines or Army depending on their group. Watch how they train." The screen showed human soldiers running through obstacle courses. A sergeant named Jake Martinez was leading his men through combat drills. The humans moved slowly compared to Vorthon warriors. They got tired quickly and had to rest often. When they practiced fighting each other, they used padded weapons because their real ones would hurt them too badly. Admiral Krixtal made a sound like laughter. "They practice with fake weapons because the real ones are too dangerous for them to use. How do they expect to fight a real war?" Another clip showed a female soldier named Lisa Adams teaching other humans how to use their rifles. She had to explain every small detail because the weapons were too complicated for them to understand quickly. Vorthon children could master energy weapons in days, but these adult humans needed weeks of training for simple projectile guns. "Look at this, Admiral," Zethkar said as he switched to new footage. "This is their idea of heavy armor." The screen showed human soldiers wearing thick vests and helmets. The gear looked bulky and slow. "Our claws could tear through that material like it was paper." The 2 Vorthon officers watched more clips of human military exercises. The humans worked in large groups because individually, they were too weak to accomplish anything. They needed vehicles to carry their equipment because they were not strong enough to bear proper loads. Their communication systems were primitive and easy to jam. "What about their space forces?" Admiral Krixtal asked. Zethkar brought up images of human warships. "They are even more pathetic, Admiral. Their largest vessels are smaller than our destroyers. They use chemical rockets for propulsion instead of proper antimatter drives. Their weapons are primitive plasma cannons and missile systems that our shields can easily stop." Admiral Krixtal studied the human fleet compositions. "They have many ships, but they are all weak. Quantity cannot make up for such poor quality." Zethkar nodded as he pulled up tactical analysis reports. "Our intelligence teams estimate that a single Vorthon battlecruiser could destroy 5 human vessels without taking damage. Their armor is thin and their power systems are inefficient." The Admiral walked to the large window that showed the stars. "The humans control 15 star systems. That is valuable territory even if the inhabitants are worthless. How long do you estimate conquest will take?" 2 weeks at most, Admiral." Zethkar replied confidently. "I request permission to lead the invasion force. This will barely qualify as a real battle." Admiral Krixtal turned back to face his commander. "You sound very certain." "I am certain because I have studied them carefully," Admiral Zethkar explained. "Humans have no natural weapons. They cannot bite or claw effectively. They have no venom or toxic breath. Their bones break easily and their skin tears at the slightest contact." Zethkar activated another screen showing human anatomy. "Look at their physical structure, Admiral. They are built for running away from predators, not for fighting them. Their entire evolutionary history shows they are prey animals that somehow developed intelligence. The Admiral examined the biological data. Human muscle density was much lower than Vorthan standards. Their reaction times were slower. They could not see as well in darkness, and their hearing was limited. By every physical measure, they were inferior warriors. What about their technology? The Admiral asked. Primitive but numerous. Zethkar answered. They make up for poor individual weapons by carrying many of them. A human soldier might have a rifle plus a pistol, plus grenades, plus a knife, plus other small devices. They need all these tools because they are too weak to rely on natural abilities. Zethkar showed more footage of human combat training. Watch how they fight, Admiral. They always try to attack from far away because they cannot win in close combat. They use explosives and long-range weapons because direct confrontation means certain death for them. Admiral Krikstal made his decision. Very well, Commander. Take 2 battle cruisers and 3 destroyers. That should be more than enough force to handle these creatures. Admiral, I could complete this mission with just 1 cruiser, Zethkar protested. The humans pose no real threat to proper warriors. Take the full force anyway, the Admiral ordered. We must make an example of them for other species to see. Let the galaxy know what happens when anyone opposes the Vorthan Empire. Zethkar saluted by striking his chest with his clawed fist. It will be my honor to crush these weak creatures, Admiral. The human territory will belong to us within days. As Admiral Krikstal left the command room, Zethkar turned back to the screens. He studied the human soldiers one more time and felt only contempt for their obvious weakness. Soon he would show them what real warriors could do in battle. The thought of easy victory made him eager to begin the attack. The Vorthan fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the human colony world called New Haven. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser, watching the planet grow larger on the main screen. The world looked peaceful, with white clouds and blue oceans just like the intelligence reports had described. All ships report ready for battle, Commander, his communications officer announced. The 5 Vorthan vessels formed an attack formation as they approached the human world. Zethkar activated his personal communicator. This is Commander Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire. Humans of New Haven surrender immediately or face destruction. The response came quickly from the planet's surface. This is Captain Ben Parker of the New Haven Colonial Defense Force. We will not surrender our world. Withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to defend ourselves. Zethkar made a sound of amusement. You will defend yourselves? With what weapons, little human? Your tiny guns cannot reach us up here. We have our ways, Commander, Captain Parker replied calmly. This is your last warning to leave our space. The Vorthan commander signaled to his weapons officer. Target their orbital defense stations and destroy them. Bright energy beams shot from the Vorthan ships toward the small defense platforms orbiting New Haven. The human structures exploded in flashes of fire and metal debris. Within minutes, all the orbital defenses were gone. Now, target their military bases on the surface, Zethkar ordered. Show them what real firepower looks like. The Vorthan fleet bombarded the main human military installation from orbit. The base disappeared under repeated energy blasts that left smoking craters where buildings had been. Zethkar watched the destruction with satisfaction. Launch landing. Craft, he commanded. Time to finish what we started. Dozens of Vorthan dropships descended through the atmosphere carrying elite shock troops. Each warrior was armed with energy weapons and protected by personal shields. Their mission was to secure the human capital city and capture any survivors for interrogation. Zethkar took his personal shuttle down to the surface to observe the conquest firsthand. He wanted to see these weak humans surrender when faced with superior Vorthan warriors. The shuttle landed near what had been the human military base. The first reports from his ground forces were exactly what he expected. Commander, the humans are retreating from all positions. They abandoned their heavy weapons and are falling back to the main city. Zethkar examined the abandoned human equipment through his tactical display. The weapons they left behind were even more primitive than his intelligence had indicated. Simple projectile rifles and basic explosives that could barely scratch Vorthan armor. Pursue them, he ordered his troops. Do not let them escape to organize resistance elsewhere. His forces advanced quickly across the open ground between the destroyed base and the human settlement. The Vorthon warriors moved in perfect formation using their superior speed and strength to cover ground rapidly. Their energy weapons could destroy human vehicles and fortifications with ease. Captain Ben Parker had established a defensive line on the outskirts of New Haven City. The human soldiers were dug into trenches and building strong points, but their positions looked weak compared to proper military engineering. Zethkar could see the fear in their movements as his forces approached. "They are trying to make a stand," his tactical officer reported. Approximately 200 human soldiers in defensive positions. Zethkar studied the human lines through his scopes. The defenders looked exactly as pathetic as he had expected. They were small figures huddled behind basic cover, clutching their primitive weapons. Some of them were clearly females, which proved how desperate the humans had become. "Begin the assault," he commanded. "Sweep them aside and secure the city." The Vorthon attack began with energy weapon barrages that lit up the human defensive positions. The humans returned fire with their projectile weapons, but the small bullets bounced harmlessly off Vorthon shields and armor. It was like watching children fight adults. Staff Sergeant Chris Johnson was leading one group of human defenders, but his position came under immediate pressure from superior Vorthon firepower. His men were forced to abandon their trenches and fall back toward the city center. The retreat looked panicked and disorganized. "Commander, the humans are breaking," his ground force leader reported. "They cannot stand against us in direct combat." Zethkar watched through his tactical displays as human positions collapsed one after another. Corporal Maya Singh attempted to rally her squad, but they were overwhelmed by Vorthon advance units. The humans grabbed what equipment they could carry and ran toward the city streets. "Excellent," Zethkar said with satisfaction. "Continue the pursuit, but be careful not to damage too much infrastructure. We want this world intact for the Empire." The battle moved into the streets of New Haven as human forces continued their retreat. The Vorthons advanced methodically, clearing each block of resistance. Human soldiers would fire a few shots, then run to the next position when Vorthon warriors got too close. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster seemed to be coordinating the human withdrawal from a command post in the city center. Zethkar could see her on his monitors, directing traffic and giving orders, but her efforts looked futile against superior Vorthon tactics. "The human commander is trying to organize them," his intelligence officer noted. "She appears to be their senior military leader." "It does not matter," Zethkar replied. "One weak human cannot turn a rabble into an army. Continue the advance." As evening approached, the Vorthon forces had pushed the human defenders back to the final defensive line around the government buildings. The humans had lost most of their heavy equipment and many of their soldiers. Their ammunition was running low, and their morale appeared broken. "Commander, we estimate human combat effectiveness is down to 30%, his tactical officer reported. "They have sustained heavy casualties and equipment losses." Zethkar nodded as he reviewed the battle reports. Everything was proceeding exactly as he had predicted. The humans were brave enough to fight, but they lacked the physical capabilities and proper weapons to pose any real threat to Vorthon warriors. "Prepare for the final assault tomorrow morning," he ordered. "We will capture their government center and end this pathetic resistance." That night, Zethkar sent his report to Admiral Krickstall. "The invasion proceeds ahead of schedule, Admiral. Human forces are broken and scattered. I expect complete victory within 24 hours. "Any surprises, Commander?" the Admiral asked. "None at all, Admiral," Zethkar replied confidently. "The humans fight exactly as we predicted. They are weak individually and poorly coordinated as units. Their weapons cannot penetrate our defenses, and their tactics are primitive. Casualties. On our side? Minor injuries only, Admiral. Nothing that will slow our advance tomorrow." As Zethkar settled in his command tent, he felt pleased with how easily the conquest was progressing. The humans had put up token resistance, but they were clearly outclassed by superior Vorthon military might. Tomorrow would bring final victory, and another world would join the Empire. He looked forward to seeing the human leaders surrender when they realized further resistance was hopeless. Perhaps some of them would make useful slaves if they survived the final battle. Either way, the outcome was certain, and Zethkar would add another easy victory to his record. The next morning brought changes that Commander Zethkar had not expected. His advanced scouts reported strange activity around the human defensive lines during the night. Equipment had been moved and new positions established, but the pattern made no sense to Vorthon tactical analysis. Commander, the humans appear to have reorganized their forces. His intelligence officer reported. They have established new firing positions and supply lines. Zethkar studied the overnight reconnaissance data with growing confusion. The human movement seemed random and poorly planned. They had spread their remaining forces across a wider area, which would make them even easier to defeat in detail. They are making our job easier, he concluded. Scattered forces cannot concentrate firepower effectively. Begin the final assault. The Vorthon attack resumed at dawn with energy weapons lighting up the morning sky. But something was different this time. The human return fire was more accurate and better coordinated than before. Several Vorthon warriors reported near misses that should have been impossible with primitive projectile weapons. Master Sergeant Tony Rodriguez had positioned his squad in a new location that gave them clear fields of fire across the approach routes. His men were hitting Vorthon targets at distances that exceeded the theoretical range of their weapons. The shooting was too accurate for such primitive equipment. Commander, our advance units are taking heavier fire than expected, the ground force leader reported. Human marksmanship has improved significantly overnight. Zethkar frowned as he reviewed the tactical displays. The humans were indeed fighting differently than they had the day before. Their movements were more coordinated and their fire more effective. But this had to be temporary luck rather than real improvement. Continue the assault, he ordered. They cannot maintain this level of performance for long. But the human performance did not decline as the battle continued. Private First Class Katie Bell led a small team that destroyed a Vorthon supply convoy, using precisely placed explosives. The attack was timed perfectly to catch the convoy at its most vulnerable point in rough terrain. Zethkar watched the destruction through his command displays with growing alarm. How did they know exactly where to place those charges? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown, Commander. The humans appear to have detailed intelligence about our movement patterns. More disturbing reports came in as the morning progressed. Human forces led by Major Rick Thompson had flanked a Vorthon advance unit and forced it to retreat. The tactical maneuver was executed with precision that seemed impossible for such a disorganized enemy. Commander, the humans are using combined arms tactics, his ground commander reported. Infantry supported by artillery with air support coordination. Zethkar studied the battle reports more carefully. The humans were indeed fighting like a professional military force rather than the rabble he had observed the day before. Their communications were crisp and their movements purposeful. Captain Susan Clark was directing human forces in a complex withdrawal that looked chaotic, but actually drew Vorthon units into carefully prepared kill zones. When the Vorthons advanced, they found themselves under crossfire from multiple directions with no clear escape routes. This is impossible, Zethkar muttered, as he watched another Vorthon unit get pinned down by coordinated human fire. They were broken and scattered yesterday. How can they be fighting so effectively today? His communications officer looked up from his station. Commander, we are receiving reports of human reinforcements arriving from other parts of the planet. What? Reinforcements? Zethkar demanded. Our intelligence showed this colony had limited military forces. Fresh human units began appearing on the battlefield throughout the day. These soldiers moved with confidence and fought with skill that matched or exceeded the performance of veteran Vorthon warriors. Their equipment looked identical to what they had seen before, but somehow it was being used much more effectively. Colonel Amy Foster had transformed from a desperate defender into a competent military commander overnight. Her orders were precise, and her tactical deployments were textbook perfect. She was fighting like someone with decades of experience rather than a colonial militia officer. Commander, our casualties are mounting, the ground force leader reported grimly. We have lost 12 warriors killed and 30 wounded. The humans are inflicting significant damage. Zethkar felt a chill run through his scaled body. Vorthon warriors were not supposed to take heavy casualties against such primitive opponents. His forces had superior weapons, armor, and physical capabilities, yet somehow the humans were matching them in combat effectiveness. Sergeant First Class Danny White demonstrated this new human capability by leading a night raid deep into Vorthan lines. His team penetrated security that should have been impenetrable and destroyed critical equipment before withdrawing without losses. The operation was executed with professional competence. How did they get past our sensors? Zethkar asked his security chief. They used techniques we have never encountered before, Commander. Electronic countermeasures combined with stealth tactics that our systems were not designed to detect. The human raids continued throughout the night. Small teams struck Vorthan positions repeatedly using hit-and-run tactics that were impossible to counter effectively. Each attack was precisely planned and perfectly executed with no wasted effort or unnecessary risks. Captain Laura Evans coordinated these operations from a mobile command post that seemed to move constantly. Vorthan attempts to locate and destroy the human command structure failed repeatedly, as their targets disappeared before counterattacks could be launched. Commander, the humans are fighting like they have been studying our tactics for years, his tactical officer observed. They know exactly how to exploit our standard procedures. Zethkar was forced to admit that something fundamental had changed in the tactical situation. The humans were no longer the weak and disorganized opponents he had expected to face. They were fighting like professional soldiers with training and equipment that matched their apparent skill level. Corporal Alex Turner proved this point by single-handedly holding a key intersection against an entire Vorthan squad. His accurate fire and tactical movement kept superior numbers at bay for over an hour until reinforcements arrived. No primitive warrior should have been capable of such performance. Commander, I recommend we withdraw and reassess the situation, his ground force leader suggested after reviewing the casualty reports. The humans are proving more dangerous than our intelligence indicated. Zethkar studied the tactical displays showing Vorthan forces pinned down or forced into defensive positions across the battlefield. His elite warriors were being outfought by opponents they had dismissed as helpless prey just days before. Private Sam Nelson exemplified the changed human performance by coordinating air support that struck Vorthan positions with devastating accuracy. The orbital bombardment was precisely targeted to avoid civilian casualties while maximizing military damage. Such precision required advanced training and sophisticated equipment. Commander, we need immediate reinforcements, came another report from the surface. Human forces have surrounded our advance units and are preventing evacuation. For the first time since arriving at New Haven, Commander Zethkar began to doubt that victory was certain. The humans were fighting with capabilities that contradicted everything his intelligence had told him about their species. Either his information had been completely wrong or these humans were very different from what they appeared to be. Commander Zethkar realized he was facing a completely different enemy than the one he had studied. The humans fighting his forces displayed capabilities that seemed impossible based on everything he knew about their species. Their small size and fragile appearance had hidden abilities that his intelligence had completely missed. Staff Sergeant Grace Miller demonstrated this hidden strength when she held an entire defensive position alone for 3 hours. A full squad of Vorthan elite warriors could not dislodge her from a bombed-out building despite having superior firepower and numbers. She moved like a ghost and shot with impossible accuracy. Commander, that single human has eliminated 6 of our warriors, the squad leader reported over radio. She appears to know exactly where we will move before we decide ourselves. Zethkar watched the tactical display in amazement as one small human continued to outfight his best troops. Miller anticipated every Vorthan tactic and countered moves before they were fully executed. Her primitive projectile weapons somehow found gaps in advanced armor that should have been impenetrable. Specialist Mike Davis proved equally impossible to understand when he disabled 3 Vorthan heavy weapon systems using nothing but basic tools and determination. The human crawled through active combat zones under heavy fire to reach critical equipment and somehow knew exactly which components to destroy. How does he know our technology well enough to disable it so efficiently? Zethkar asked his technical officer. Those systems should be incomprehensible to primitive minds. Unknown, Commander. The human appears to have engineering knowledge that exceeds our expectations for his species. The pattern was repeating across the entire battlefield. Individual humans were performing feats that should have been impossible for creatures of their size and apparent limitations. They moved faster than they should have been able to. They shot more accurately than their equipment should have allowed. They fought longer than their endurance should have permitted. Captain Laura Evans had somehow coordinated an artillery strike that destroyed a Vorthon command post from orbit, despite having no apparent connection to space-based weapons. The strike was so precisely targeted that it eliminated the command structure, while leaving nearby civilian buildings completely undamaged. Commander, the human orbital capabilities far exceed our intelligence estimates, his fleet commander reported. They have weapons platforms we never detected and targeting systems that rival our own technology. Zethkar felt his confidence cracking as report after report contradicted his assumptions about human military capability. The creatures he had dismissed as weak prey were proving to be dangerous predators who had been hiding their true nature. Fork. Most disturbing revelation came when he observed human soldiers helping their wounded comrades. Corporal Alex Turner had been shot while advancing across open ground, but instead of retreating, his squad mates charged directly into Vorthon fire to rescue him. They ignored overwhelming enemy firepower to save one injured human. They are willing to die for each other, Zethkar observed with growing unease. This is not the behavior of prey animals. His tactical officer nodded grimly. Commander, their unit cohesion is unlike anything we have encountered. They fight as if every individual death diminishes their collective strength. This self-sacrificial behavior was appearing everywhere on the battlefield. Private Sam Nelson threw himself on top of an explosive device to protect his squad from the blast. The human died but saved 5 of his comrades who immediately fought with increased ferocity to avenge his sacrifice. Their casualties make them stronger instead of weaker, Zethkar realized with horror. Every human we kill increases the determination of the survivors. Specialist Tim Brooks exemplified this when he single-handedly destroyed a Vorthon armored vehicle after watching his best friend get killed in the fighting. The human used improvised explosives and reckless courage to eliminate a target that should have required heavy weapons to defeat. Commander, the humans are displaying combat effectiveness that exceeds theoretical maximums for their physical capabilities, his science officer reported after analyzing the battle data. They are operating at performance levels that should be impossible. Zethkar studied the scientific analysis with growing dread. The humans were somehow pushing their bodies and equipment far beyond normal limits through sheer force of will. Their determination was allowing them to accomplish things that physics said they should not be able to do. Major Kate Robinson led the most disturbing example of human capability when she coordinated a complex multi-unit assault that broke through Vorthon defensive lines at their strongest point. The attack involved precise timing between ground forces, artillery support, and electronic warfare that demonstrated professional military competence. That maneuver required planning and execution skills equal to our best commanders, Zethkar admitted reluctantly. The human leader is fighting like someone with decades of experience. Lieutenant Jim Torres supported this assessment by leading a night infiltration that penetrated deep into Vorthon headquarters areas. His team gathered intelligence and sabotaged equipment without being detected until they were already withdrawing. The operation was flawlessly executed. Commander, they somehow mapped our entire defensive network and identified every weak point, his security chief reported. The humans have intelligence-gathering capabilities we never suspected. The final shock came when Zethkar realized that the human forces were actually growing stronger as the battle continued. Fresh units kept appearing with better equipment and improved tactics. What had started as a demoralized colonial militia was transforming into a professional military force. Colonel Pete Anderson arrived with reinforcements that included heavy weapons and advanced communication gear. The new human equipment was more sophisticated than the primitive tools Zethkar had observed in the initial intelligence reports. Either the humans had been hiding their true capabilities, or they were receiving support from unknown sources. Commander, we are facing an enemy that bears no resemblance to our intelligence estimates, his ground force leader reported. The humans are fighting with skill and equipment that rivals our own military. Major Ellen Davis proved this by coordinating a combined arms operation that forced an entire Vorthon battalion to retreat from prepared positions. Her tactical competence and available resources were far beyond what should have been possible for a colonial defense force. They were never the weak primitives we thought they were, Zethkar realized as he watched his forces fall back under human pressure. We have been fighting an enemy that was deliberately concealing their true strength. The revelation was terrifying in its implications. If humans could hide such military capability, then what else might they be concealing? Their apparent weakness had been a mask that concealed dangerous strength. Zethkar began to understand that his forces were not conquering helpless prey, but had walked into a carefully prepared trap. "Commander, I strongly recommend immediate withdrawal," his senior staff advised. "The tactical situation has deteriorated beyond our ability to control." For the first time in his military career, Commander Zethkar was forced to consider the possibility of defeat at the hands of opponents he had completely underestimated. The final human counteroffensive began at dawn with coordinated strikes that shattered Vorthan defensive lines across the entire front. Colonel Amy Foster had transformed her forces from a desperate militia into a precision military machine that moved with clockwork efficiency. Every unit knew its role and executed orders with professional competence. Captain Bruce Lee commanded the human cruiser Liberty's Edge as it emerged from behind one of New Haven's moons, where it had been hiding since the invasion began. The ship immediately engaged Zethkar's fleet with weapons that were far more advanced than intelligence reports had indicated. Energy beams and missile salvos struck Vorthan vessels with devastating accuracy. "Commander, the human fleet capabilities were completely underestimated," his naval officer reported as damage reports flooded in. "Their weapons are penetrating our shields and their targeting systems are superior to our own." Zethkar watched in horror as his supposedly superior fleet was outfought by human ships that should have been helpless against Vorthan technology. The Liberty's Edge moved with grace and speed that seemed impossible for such primitive propulsion systems. On the surface, Major Kate Robinson led the spearhead assault that cut through Vorthan positions like they were made of paper. Her forces advanced with tactical precision that would have impressed veteran Vorthan commanders. Every movement was calculated and every shot was placed with deadly accuracy. "All units are reporting heavy human pressure," his ground commander transmitted. "They are attacking simultaneously across multiple fronts with perfect coordination." Lieutenant Jim Torres supported the main assault by leading special forces teams that eliminated key Vorthan strongpoints behind the lines. His warriors moved through defended territory as if they owned it, and struck targets with surgical precision before vanishing into the landscape. Zethkar found himself trapped in his forward command post as human forces surrounded his position. The attack came so quickly that his guards had no time to establish proper defenses. Within hours, the supposedly inferior humans had turned the tables completely. "Commander, we are cut off from the main force," his communications officer reported. "Human units have severed all our supply lines and escape routes." Through his tactical display, Zethkar could see human soldiers advancing with weapons ready, but showing no signs of the bloodthirsty violence he expected from conquering forces. They moved with discipline and restraint that spoke of professional military training. The end came when the command post doors were blown open by precisely placed charges. Human special forces poured through the breach with weapons aimed but fingers off triggers. They were ready to fight but seemed more interested in capturing than killing their enemies. "Vorthan forces, lay down your weapons," called Major Kate Robinson as she entered with her assault team. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and you will be treated according to the laws of war." Zethkar expected to be executed immediately, as was standard practice in Vorthan military culture. Instead, the humans disarmed his forces and provided medical attention to wounded warriors. They treated their captives with care that seemed impossible to understand. "Why do you not kill us?" Zethkar asked Major Robinson as medics tended to his injured communications officer. "Because we are not animals," she replied simply. "Prisoners of war have rights under our legal system. You will be detained until this conflict ends and then returned to your people." The concept was so alien that Zethkar struggled to comprehend it. In his experience, defeated enemies were either killed or enslaved. The idea that humans would feed and care for captured Vorthans made no sense according to everything he knew about warfare. During his captivity, Zethkar had long conversations with human officers who tried to explain their military philosophy. Colonel Pete Anderson visited regularly to discuss tactics and strategy. The human commander spoke with respect about Vorthan fighting abilities while pointing out the mistakes that had led to their defeat. "Your forces fought bravely, Commander," Anderson said during one meeting. "But you underestimated our capabilities and overestimated your own advantages." "How did we get everything so wrong?" Zethkar asked. "Our intelligence was completely inaccurate." Anderson smiled grimly. "Your intelligence was based on observing our civilian population and basic military training. You never saw our elite forces or advanced equipment because we kept them hidden until they were needed." The revelation was devastating. The humans had deliberately allowed Vorthan spies to observe only their weakest forces while concealing their true military capability. The invasion had been walking into a carefully prepared ambush from the very beginning. Major Ellen Davis explained more during another visit. "We knew you were watching us, so we made sure you saw exactly what we wanted you to see. Colonial militia, with basic training and primitive equipment while our real military stayed out of sight." "But your soldiers fought beyond their physical limitations," Zethkar protested. "They accomplished impossible things through determination alone." "That is what makes us human," Davis replied. "We refuse to accept defeat even when logic says we should give up. Our species has survived by adapting and overcoming obstacles that should have destroyed us." The final lesson came when prisoner exchange negotiations began. Admiral Krikstal expected Zethkar to report easy victory, and was shocked to learn about the defeat instead. The human terms for prisoner release were surprisingly generous considering their military advantage. The humans could demand territorial concessions or reparations, the Admiral noted during their private communication. Instead, they only ask for recognition of their sovereignty and a promise of non-aggression. Zethkar found himself in the unprecedented position of recommending peace with an opponent the Empire had intended to conquer. "Admiral, the humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They possess capabilities that our intelligence completely failed to detect." "Explain." "Commander, they can hide their true military strength while appearing weak and helpless. They fight with determination that exceeds physical limitations. They coordinate complex operations across multiple domains simultaneously. Most importantly, they refuse to accept defeat regardless of casualties or tactical disadvantage." Admiral Krikstal processed this information carefully. "Are you saying they are too dangerous to conquer?" "I am saying they are too dangerous to underestimate, Admiral. We must treat them as equals rather than prey if we want to avoid future disasters." When Zethkar was finally released, he carried scars that went far deeper than the physical wounds from battle. The humans had fundamentally changed his understanding of what made a warrior truly dangerous. Size and strength meant nothing compared to intelligence, determination, and the will to sacrifice everything for victory. His final report. To the Vorthan High Command recommended immediate withdrawal from human space and establishment of peaceful diplomatic relations. The species that had seemed like easy prey had proven to be apex predators who had simply been hiding their claws. "The humans taught us that appearances can be completely deceiving." Zethkar concluded his presentation. "We must never make the mistake of judging an opponent based on surface characteristics alone. The most dangerous enemies are often those who look the most harmless." The Vorthan Empire quietly withdrew from human territory, and Zethkar became an advocate for careful diplomatic engagement rather than military conquest. He had learned the hard way that sometimes the greatest warriors are those who do not look like warriors at all.